Welcome everyone to a session of TriTech University. My name is Bill Steppen, and today we are going to be taking a look at setting up tasks in your new version of AIM for version 12. This is something that's actually exclusive to version 12, introduced when we rolled it out, and it allows you to set up automated functions by leaving your computer on, which quite honestly you probably do anyway, at least your server computer most likely, and it lets you automate a number of different functions that quite honestly are worth automating. They're usually things that just need to happen on a regular basis, or maybe they are reports that you'd like to have happen at a given time. Maybe those are nightly or weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, whatever it might be. We're going to take a close look at how to set that up here in the AIM software and how to use a function built into every Windows version, if I'm not mistaken, at least Windows 8 and up, which we're compatible with, called the Task Scheduler, that allows you to set that up. We are using GoToWebinar for this session. So on the side of your screen, you're going to have a GoToWebinar control panel. And in that control panel, there's going to be a questions box. So if at any point during this broadcast you have a question, feel free to type it into that questions box, and I will do my best to answer those as we go along. I don't foresee the being needed here to go over this, so we should have plenty of time for any questions and answers. And if there's anything that you would like to see in future upcoming webinars, we're trying to do at least 2 of these every week now. So anything that you have in mind for something that you'd like to see, just let us know in that questions box, and we will take all ideas into consideration. We have them scheduled out through at least mid-April, so feel free to definitely check that calendar out on our website at tritechretail.com. And if you see something that interests you, definitely sign up for it. And if you don't see a topic that you'd like to see covered, then like I said, either leave a question in the questions box or feel free to send an email to training@tritechretail.com. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that you might want to see is where to actually think about starting to how to set up these tasks. You're going to find them in the admin menu. And so we'll just go into our admin menu here. I'm using a plain Jane bone stock Windows system that I just have loaded up here for the first time today. In the admin menu is a utilities menu, and then in that utilities menu is the function for setting up tasks. Now, when you open up this set up tasks function, you're going to see this table over here on the left that's going to be empty, and you set up tasks with any number of actions associated with that task. So as an example here, in the name field, you might have this be called nightly reports, and then the parameter ID, and this is important, we'll talk about the parameter ID later, but it's going to be something that you'll want to have be nice and short and to the point, and it should all be one word. So in this case, I might do EOD for end of day reports. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just save this for the moment. Actually, I guess I can't save it because I need to have at least one action. Now, I'm gonna come back and I'm actually gonna set all the rest of this up in just a few moments, but just so you can get the idea of how this works. An action is one or more things that you're gonna have happen when this task is run, this particular task up here, this EOD reports task. If we go ahead and click the add button down here for the actions, you'll notice that you start off with what's called a type, and these are the different actions that you can choose from. You can see that you've got options in here for such as vendor quantity updates through Active E, averaging your inventory. We recommend that that be done on a monthly basis. Backup database, we recommend that that be done nightly. If you have any custom programs that you have set up, you can set those up to be run. Depreciate inventory. If you have lease pool inventory that you're depreciating, that is most likely supposed to be done on a monthly basis as well. Import reverb orders. If you are a music store and you're making use of our reverb functionality, this can be used to import those on a regular basis so that you don't have to remember to do so. Philip Morris scan data export. So if you are a store that sells cigarettes and other Philip Morris products, you might be taking advantage of that. The reports section, which we'll talk about in much more detail here in just a few moments. The smart detailing POS synchronization. So again, if you're using the smart detailing function, usually if you're a bike store, those are more in line with a store that might be using smart detailing. You can synchronize their point of sale with AIM, again, on that regular basis. Teacher's own payments, so however often you want those teacher's own payments to get pulled in, they're usually done on a nightly basis. You can pull those in. Update the ActiveE third-party feed, and update ActiveE Reverb and ActiveE update shopping cart inventory. We kind of have all these grouped together, kind of following up there with the shopping cart shipping. Basically, the idea with all of these, they're all kind of there together just because that's how they line up alphabetically. But throughout the day, if you have items that you're tracking quantity of, if you are frequently pushing new products up to your cart, basically all these different functions here are set up so that you can have those being updated frequently throughout the day, whether that's every half an hour or hour or 2 hours or so. Ultimately, it depends on how active your website is and how active your brick and mortar store is. Usually the more active those two sides of the bridge are, the more frequently you'll want to update that activity going back and forth across it. Now, depending on what you pick, for example, if we pick the teacher's own payments, you'll see it basically is what it is. You can give it a name. But depending on what you pick, you might have more options to select. And this is where we get into reports. You'll notice that when I select the reports, you give it a name, so whatever name you want it to be called. It doesn't have to be anything unique, but that will be something that will show up on if you are saving this to a PDF or whatever it might be. So in this case, I might call this nightly sales report. And again, I'm not going to be able to save this because I'm going to talk about how this all works, but in the detail view here, this is where you can pick the report that you want to run. And if it helps, you can press F6 on your keyboard so that you can pull up a little bit easier the reporting question. So I might target the daily activity report here. So I'll just start typing that in and you'll see it takes me right to it. I can select that from there. And then you'll notice it's going to ask for report preferences. And if you don't have any report preferences, you won't be able to save this step, nor will you be able to do so if you don't pick the export or print options. But we'll talk about that in a second. What's a report preference, I might hear you asking? Well, this is something that is going to be crucial not only to tasks, but just to an easier workflow for yourself throughout the day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel all this. Just keep all that in mind. I showed you that for a reason. We're going to come back to it in just a moment. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to that report that I was just trying to automate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to reports. I'm going to go to miscellaneous where I know that report exists. And then I'm going to go ahead and select the daily activity report. Now, you'll notice when you run this and most any other report, it wants to ask you, what date range do you want this to run for? And if we think about the task for a moment, essentially what the task is trying to do is it's trying to run this report on your behalf, but it needs to know some of these parameters. What date range do you want this to run for? Are there specific workstations you want to run it for? Specific employees, regions, locations? Do you want to run it for detail? Do you want to do any of these different things? And that's going to be different from one report to the next. Every report has its own unique selection criteria. So what you can do is you can make some selections. Let's say that I want to go ahead and run this for certain computers. Let's say I want to run this for computers 1 and 2 and 3. And if you hold down the control key on your keyboard, you can select multiple workstations in this fashion. You could also select multiple locations. If you have, let's say, 3 or more locations and you wanted to only run them for some but not all, you could make your selections in that way. Now, for the people who are basically brand new to the AIM system, when you have these selection windows like this, if you don't make any selection on these drop-down windows like this, then by default it runs it for all. But back to the case in point, when I'm setting this up, let's say I want to run this so that it's targeting these particular computers. Let's go ahead and throw computer 11 in there as well, just because that happens to be mine. But you can then right-click, and this is the important part. You can right-click on any gray space and you can save a report preference, one or more report preferences. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and call this end of day bill for my name. And then over here, I could select multiple employees that I would want to have access to these report preferences. If you were using these report preferences just throughout the day, then by all means, you'll probably want to spend some time figuring out which employee should have access to it and things like that. But what I'm going to do here is, more importantly, in these begin and end date fields here, you can see how if I select from here, it's going to give me options for current date, beginning of current week, month, end of current month, beginning of and end of current years, things like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick current date for both of these fields. This is the beginning date and the ending date. So beginning date and ending date respectively. And then if I want this report to run at the end of the night for the current day, basically I'm going to leave that as is, current date, current date. I am going to come over here and in this time field, I'm going to make this be 11:59 p.m. And I'm going to go ahead and say okay on that. And you'll notice that it fills that in up here. Now, basically, by saving those report preferences, every time I run that report, if I want to run those report preferences without having to reselect that every time, I can simply right-click and I can load, in this case, the end of day EOD bill preferences. And it goes ahead and selects everything that I just basically automated with those report preferences. Now, outside of the tasks function, if you wanted that particular report preference to run every time you ran that report, when you are working with it, I'm going to go ahead and load them and I'm going to update them. And when I'm updating them, I can check mark it as default. So this is just a little side tip. If you've got a particular type of report preference marked as default, then when you run that report, you'll notice it automatically selects those that report preference for me when I run it. But that's beside the point. That's just a little extra tidbit there for you. Now that I have a report preference, at least one, I can go back to the tasks. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go back to the main menu and we'll go into the admin menu, the utilities menu, and the set of tasks program. And let's go ahead and finish what I was doing on this first half of setting up tasks. So in the name field, I'm going to go ahead and type in nightly reports. And in the parameter ID, I'm going to put in EOD reports. You'll notice if I hit space, it automatically puts in a little underscore there for me. That's just a little thing that if you did want this to be a bit more specific and a little bit more laid out, you could do that. However, I find it's easier to set up the task later on if you don't have any spaces like that. So again, just keep that in mind as we go forward. Now, there's other functions here, the LAN ID. Basically, the idea with that is that if you wanted to associate this with a certain login when these functions are being run, you could certainly do that. If you wanted to secure this task by a Windows login, you certainly could do that as well. I'm not going to worry too much about that because we'll take a look at kind of functions along that later on. Let's get back to the actions. Let's add an action, and I'm going to make this be a report. I'm going to call this daily sales. And then in the detail, I'm going to go ahead. Again, I'm going to use F6, and I'm going to search for daily activity, and there it is. And then I'm going to go ahead and select those report preferences that I just generated. So the end of day bill. And I'm going to click this button that says set up print or export settings. And basically, this is the output that you want this report to generate when the task is going to run. Do you want this to be sent to a local printer? Would you like it to be saved to some kind of file format? Would you like it to be emailed? So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to export that to a PDF, and then from there I select where I want that to go. Let's just go ahead and put it to my desktop, and we'll call it test report. There we go. And then if I want to, I could even check mark this little date timestamp, because the idea here is that if you're having this report run, let's say every night, quite honestly, this is going to fill up with reports unless you do something with them. So by having a date timestamp, it'll take the test report and it'll put the date timestamp at the end of that name. Let's go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to save that action. And again, you could have multiple actions here if you so desired. You could set them to act in a particular order when the task is run by clicking the set order and then dragging them up and down, or sorting them alphabetically, top to bottom or bottom to top. Ultimately, I don't think it matters too much, in my personal opinion, what order they're in, but it may to you depending on what things you want to have first. Say, for example, if you are going to go ahead and include, just because you can, your nightly backup in with this function, then we can certainly do that as well. So maybe you want the backup to happen before you want the report to happen. Well, we could certainly do that. We'll just click the set order, and then we'll drag the backup to the top of the list so that that happens before the daily sales report runs. But just because I want this to happen nice and speedy, I'm actually going to remove the backup from this particular set of actions that are going to be associated with this task. So let's go ahead and save that. Now remember, the parameter ID is very important here. So remember that as we move into the second half of setting up your tasks. This is basically what the tasks are going to do. Now we're going to move into when these tasks should be run. And to do that, we're going to go into a special function. Like I said, it's in most every Windows version from 8 and up, and it's going to be called Task Scheduler. So when you go to your Start menu, if you go ahead and start typing in Task Scheduler, it should take you right to it. We'll go ahead and select this, and this is going to go ahead and open up our Task Scheduler. Let me just make sure that you're seeing it here. There we go. So the idea here now is this is going to show you all of the tasks that are scheduled to be running on your computer at any given time. You might not be aware that this is actually set up to happen. And in fact, outside of the AIM system, this is actually a pretty powerful function for just having a lot of things being done on your Windows computer without you having to remember it. So let's take a look at some tasks for setting up for your Windows functions here with AIM. Over on the right, you've got a series of different actions that you can do in the task scheduler itself, not to be confused with the actions we were just looking at in AIM. I'm going to create a basic task. And if you choose the option to create basic task, the task scheduler has a little wizard that'll basically walk you through setting this task up. So let's go ahead and click that option here, and this will open up a task wizard. In the task wizard, you can give this task a name. And again, this doesn't have to be anything specific. It doesn't have to be the same name as we were seeing the name of the task before. I'm just going to call this Nightly AIM Reports, just to differentiate a smidge. You could certainly go ahead and give this any kind of description you like. Basically, when you're looking at the task in the task scheduler, if you wanted a reminder of what the task does, you can set up a description so that you can browse that at any given time. Let's go ahead and click the next button, and this is going to ask us now for a trigger. When do you want this task to start? In this case, I want it to be daily. You see you have other options here for weekly, monthly, one-time tasks, when the computer starts, when you log on, other types of options. For our purposes, I'm going to go ahead and say this is a daily task. So I'm going to go ahead and say next. When do you want this to happen? We can go ahead and basically say that this is going to happen at any time of day. Normally, like I said, you would probably have this being run, say, for example, like 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night, maybe 2 o'clock the next morning. If you are doing it the next morning for the previous day, just make sure that when you're setting up the date range option in your report preferences, that it is going to reference the previous day. So just kind of keep that in mind. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and in the time field here, for the purposes of this webinar, I'm going to say this is going to happen at 10:24. And then I want this to recur every day. So I'll just go ahead and say next. And then what do I want it to do? Do I want it to start a program, send an email, or display a message? And I'm going to go ahead and say start a program. From there, I'm going to go ahead and point it to the AIM software executable on my computer. So I'm going to go to the C drive, to the AIM folder, and I'm going to go ahead and select aim.exe. And in the arguments field here, I'm going to type in task, all in uppercase. And then I'm going to come back here. I'm going to copy the parameter ID, go back to the setup here, and I'm going to paste that into the section here. So it basically will then run aim.exe task and then the name of the parameter ID or the task. I'm going to say next. I'm going to go ahead and finish this. And now basically that task is set to occur today at, if I'm not mistaken, about 2 minutes from now. And like I was saying, and when you're in this task scheduler, one of the things that you can do is you can see what all of the active tasks are on this listing here. So if you scroll through here, you're going to probably see a lot of functions that are, like I said, automated without you having even known it. If I go ahead and go through here, I should eventually find the task that I just created. But let's go ahead and just refresh this just to make sure that it's got the snapshot of those tasks that I just created there. But basically what we're going to find is, if I remember correctly, I called it daily AIM sales. So let's just kind of keep scrolling here. And these are not necessarily in alphabetical order, although it looks like they are for the most part. All right, that's right. These are active tasks. Let's go up here to the task status. But basically what I should be seeing here, and let's just go ahead and exit out of here. And like I was saying, AIM doesn't have to be running. I'm going to go ahead and close it. And let's just go ahead and shrink down to the desktop here. And what we should be seeing here in just a moment is we should be seeing, if I remember correctly, it was like 10:24:42 or something like that. So basically, in just about a minute or so, we should be seeing an icon appear right on my desktop up here underneath my GoToWebinar link for the PDF that it should be creating. While I'm waiting on that, let me just go ahead and pop over and take a quick look to see if there are any incoming questions. I'm not seeing any. So while we're waiting on that, let me just go ahead and mention some of the other webinars. There we go. You can see the task running there. So I do have another webinar coming up this Thursday. I believe it is at 2 o'clock, either 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. I don't remember the exact time, but that will be on going through all of the grid functionality. that is available in version 12. So basically any place where there's a table or a grid in the program, we'll be taking a look at how to take advantage of all that. Anyway, you can see that there is our PDF of the test report. So we can go ahead and we can basically open that up. And of course, I don't have any activity in my system because like I said, I just set this up the other day. But now what that has done is because that task is now set up to run every day, then the next day it would come up and it would run that same function. And you can see how that, I don't know if you can see that or not. Let me see if I can make that any more noticeable, but up there in the corner, you can see how this says test report 2020 331 1025:05. So basically the date and the time that this report was run. So if I were to let this task run every single day, then I would eventually get test report 2020 4-1, test report 2020 4-2, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that way you can see exactly when that report was run, and then when you open it up, you can take a look at the details of that report. So, like I was saying, hopefully that's something that you can take advantage of. I know personally I use it myself every day so that I can see any of the latest trainings that have been purchased or things of that nature here at TriTech. So yeah, definitely take advantage of that. And by the way, we're always looking for ways to make that even more functional. So you might even be seeing more options in that action dropdown than you are seeing in the recording of this webinar going forward. So just to hop back in there and reiterate what your options are for tasks. 1 second while I hop back into that. And again, it's reports, it's backups, it's averaging inventory, depreciating inventory, a lot of the active E elements regarding your shopping cart, downloading vendor quantities if you have associated vendors that are that have that functionality available. It is custom programs if you have any custom programs in your system. Back to the listing here, it is contract notices. If you are doing long-term contracts and you would like to update automatically for delinquency notices, then by all means you can update on that daily or bi-weekly basis, however often you normally want to update your delinquencies, and then you could have a report that is automated in addition to that. That would then come up and show you the delinquency report. So there's a lot of power with this. Definitely take advantage of it. If there's any questions that come up afterwards that you didn't get a chance to answer here today, or that that comes up down the road when you're watching the recording, definitely give us a shout. You can give us a call on our support lines. You can also send an email directly to me. Again, my email is training@tritechretail.com. My name's Bill Steppen, and hopefully this has been helpful for you. Thank you so much for your attention and for your loyalty to TriTech. We don't take that for granted. We want to give you the best product possible, and I hope you make it a great day.